Let's get into some archive papers from the 1990s that show the way the media was discussing Camilla pre-Diana's passing. What's interesting is Camilla had to contend with Diana's presence for the better part of the 90s, and then she had to contend with the legacy and the grief that people had for this fallen princess. This is from January of 1995 when Camilla and Andrew announced they're divorced. Even the family didn't know of the separation. Camilla is ruining her children, etc., etc. It refers to her as royal mistress. This is another January 1995 article from the Daily Mirror, which accurately predicts that the next divorce after Camilla and Andrew will be Charles and Diana, paving the way for Charles and Camilla to be together. Another 1995 January article. And what does your majesty think about Charles's lover being crowned? Queen Camilla, expletives. Quote, her views, the queen, on suggestions that Camilla might one day become queen are said to be unprintable. She learned only on Monday afternoon that the Brigadier, Parker Bowles, and Camilla were to divorce. She immediately urged extreme caution on all sides. Again, I'm not saying that's true. I'm just saying this is the media spin. Outrage over this idea that Camilla and Charles might marry and she might one day be queen. No one is accepting of it. In October of 1995, Prince Charles has finally come out of the shadows with his mistress Camilla Parker Bowles. They're out and about on town. But the next month is Diana's Panorama interview. There were 3 of us in the marriage, so it was a bit crowded. Not great for Camilla. The princess is very popular. Camilla is not. This does not help Camilla's image. Now we're into 1996, the year that Charles and Diana divorced. We get a lot of letters to the editor, and I find these really illuminating. Now, obviously, they're picking the ones that they think are best for print, so maybe they're skewed one way or the other. But most of them show to me that public sentiment about Camilla changes much slower than maybe the media's view of Camilla does. We also get this interesting Charles's attempt to fight the press and the paparazzi to stay away from Camilla when she's at Balmoral. Gotta have a copying look thing, because what are we doing if we're not reducing 2 women to their clothing? And this is the first time in 96 that I noticed PR help for Camilla. This article specifically mentions Alan Kilkenny. Kilkenny has maintained that he was just a friend of Camilla Parker Bowles despite working in PR, but accounts do suggest that he might have been a predecessor for someone like Mark Boland. And we will be getting into Mark Boland very soon. In the next video, we're moving into 1997. We are going to look at articles pre and post Diana's death, and then bring in Mr. Boland. Stay tuned. Now let's get into some 1997 articles specifically before Diana's death. This is from the spring of 1997. Again, this is disgusting. Cinderella and the Ugly Sister. No. But it does give you some idea about the sentiment around Camilla. Then there's the whole off with his crown. Again, Charles is also not popular at this time. And then there's this interesting article where Camilla gets into a car crash 2 months before Diana dies in a car crash and calls Prince Charles instead of the cops, or something happens. And then it's this whole Camilla is above the law. His mistress is above the law kind of content. But in some ways, things are starting to look better for Camilla. There's this kind of nice, but also backhanded article about loving Camilla now that she's Old Spice, which I don't think that's supposed to be nice. I get the Spice Girls reference. So it says, quote, the British are definitely starting to warm to Camilla Parker Bowles. Once she was public enemy #1. Now she's more like wrinkly Spice. It is truly a remarkable transformation. It basically goes on to say, yes, she played a part in breaking up Charles and Diana's marriage, but what did she really do to us? Do we need to continue dragging her through the mud? Hasn't she been through enough? But again, things are starting to look up for Camilla. She's getting ready to hold her first official function on behalf of the National Osteoporosis Society. But then Princess Diana is unexpectedly killed in a car crash in Paris in August of 1997. And this puts the Camilla rehabbing of her image on hold. It cannot be overemphasized how much the people loved Diana and the outpouring of grief with her passing. And not just that, the anger at the media, at the royal family, at Charles, and at Camilla. Camilla obviously takes a bit of a low profile for the rest of 1997. This is from November. Charles takes Camilla's kids to the cinema, so we're kind of re-entering slowly but surely. And this is around the time that Mark Boland enters the picture. So right now we're going to move Mark Boland to the forefront of our series while continuing to look at the articles and the coverage of Camilla. But it's very important for us to talk about Mark Boland. We are going to get into him in our next video. Stay tuned. The best way to introduce Mark Boland is to listen to some clips from Reinventing the Royals of how others have described him.
Probably knew as much about the editors of Fleet Street as others did about the royal family. and because of these amazing contacts that he had with editors, was able to get their ear. Brilliant manipulator.
Guy coming in and changing all the rules. And Mark Boland certainly had his work cut out. In the wake of Diana's death and all that had gone before, Charles's reputation was in tatters.
Mark Boland was born in Canada in 1966 to UK parents. He first worked for the Advertising Standards Authority and started a career in media regulation before following Lord MacGregor to the newly created PCC, the Press Complaints Commission. He started off as an executive assistant before being promoted to the director of the PCC from 1992 to 1996. We're going to quickly return to Reinventing the Royals to get a better look at what the media was facing during this time and why the PCC was created.
Court of public opinion, accused literally of murdering the princess. The clock was ticking. The press at that point was looking over the precipice into a fully fledged, deeply repressive privacy law.
The newspaper industry was policed through an editor's code of conduct, overseen by the Press Complaints Commission, which was owned and controlled by the press itself. To satisfy public and political pressure for change, they would have to act fast.
I think there is a watershed in the mood in the country and the mood in the press.
Lord Wakeham, who you just saw in that clip, was the successor to MacGregor. He was the one that recommended to Prince Charles that he should hire Mark Boland. Bolland is appointed Assistant Private Secretary to Charles, Prince of Wales, in August of 1996, and in 1997 he becomes the Deputy Private Secretary. He served in that role until 2002. Guy Black, who you might have recognized from that clip, is actually Mark Boland's longtime partner, now husband. He's done a lot of work with the Conservative Party's communications arm, and he returned to work for Lord Wakeham, director of the PCC, in 1996 after Bolland had left. So at this point in time, you have Mark Boland, who was the former director of the PCC, well known on Fleet Street, working for Charles and Camilla primarily to improve their reputations and usher in acceptance for Camilla, while his partner, Guy Black, is running the PCC. Also of note, Guy Black is currently an executive director at the Telegraph Media Group, which includes the Daily and the Sunday Telegraph. Among Boland's media friends includes Rebecca Brooks, now Wade. That is a name that you should remember and that you might recognize. It will come into play later. Apparently, they have all vacationed together in Tuscany. Next, we are getting into Operation Camilla Parker Bowles. Let's talk about Mark Boland and Operation Camilla Parker Bowles. In 1996, Charles decides that he is going to have his press office split from the palace. He handed control of his media operations to Mark Boland. And while Boland needs to improve Camilla's image in the press, he also needs to improve Charles, and that starts with how Charles interacts with the press.
He made a point of talking to the photographers, the cameramen, the BBC, the dreaded tab.
Emphasis was very much on a more relaxed, fun-loving Charles, and critically, that new narrative, Charles the Good Father. To wit, the presence of Prince Harry, coincidentally on a half-term break, created PR opportunities galore.
So Boland's strategy appears to not just be improving their image in the press, but also improving their relationships with people in the press. Moving into the infamous Highgrove meeting. This occurs in 1998, and it's when it gets out into the press that Camilla and Prince William have finally met. I tried so hard to find the original article about this. This was the best I could do from the Mirror. Wills meets Camilla for the first time. So this is where I wanted us to remember Rebecca Brooks, because she is the one that just happens to call up Sandy Henney, who we have seen previously, and tell her that she has all of this information and all of these details, and they are going to publish this story. Sandy asked if she would wait 24 hours so that she could prepare William for the fact that this is all going to come out. The article has a ton of details that people would be hard-pressed to know unless somebody was leaking. Camilla's private secretary ends up taking the fall for this because her husband is an executive at the Times and she mistakenly told him about it. But this same private secretary gets hired back pretty quickly afterwards. So here's a clip from Reinventing the Royals about that incident.
It was very interesting that it was delivered to the Sun. Clearly a strategy, testing the water. Let's see what sort of reaction it gets from other newspapers. Would papers like mine, for example, the Mail, which are still very pro-Diana, would we kick up a fuss about this, saying it's all wrong, is too soon?
And did you?
No.
You couldn't have got it from a better source, and Camilla and William didn't tell you? No. So, It's Mark Boland, I mean, he
He didn't like being used by anybody, and he felt, from what I remember, that he was being used by his father's staff.
Do you think he was being used?
Yes. Yeah, I'm sure he was.
Highgrove was largely seen as a media success for Camilla. It showed that Prince William accepted her, and since Prince William was more popular than Camilla, that helps Camilla. Stay tuned for more of Operation Camilla Parker Bowles. While Mark Boland is definitely seen as having a lot of success in reinventing Camilla's image, there are definitely some setbacks. For one, he is partially blamed from the fallout from Penny Jr.'s biography that comes out the year after Diana's death, called Charles, Villain or Victim. And truly, we could do a whole series on royal biographers, but that's an entirely different story. You see here Unhappy Camilla over the fallout from the book, trying to figure out who among Charles's friends might have leaked the information to Penny Jr. Royal letters, many people are very angry at Penny Jr.'s thoughts. I feel like this cartoon really sums it up. It's Prince Charles running in saying, Camilla, you're not the most loathed woman in Britain. It's now Penny Jr. But things are about to take a positive turn, and it's with Operation Ritz. This is a Mirror article about 20 years after this happened. Operation Ritz, clever plan which brought Charles and Camilla's relationship out of the shadows. Operation Ritz was a perfectly planned moment which saw Prince Charles and Camilla appear together as a couple for the first time after keeping their relationship in the shadows for years.
Hundreds and hundreds of photographs have been taken in these few seconds. Prince Charles and his long-standing companion, Camilla Parker Bowles, have now shown themselves in public as a couple.
It seems kind of silly in retrospect, but it was a massive turning point. And to be clear, it's not like the media suddenly becomes positive overnight. I mean, the shadow of Diana still looms large, as you can see here in 99. Memories will never die, Camilla. But I think a big turning point comes when there is news that the Queen and Camilla will finally meet in 2000. This is from The Guardian, June 2000. The Queen met Camilla Parker Bowles, the Prince of Wales's longtime love. Buckingham Palace confirmed last night it was at a private party. Now, it might just be because it's The Guardian. I haven't looked into it, but notice they call her the longtime love. She's not the mistress. She's not the side piece, etc. As The Guardian notes, it was carefully choreographed, probably in a move to make Camilla's relationship with Prince Charles seem more acceptable to the public. Further solidifying their relationship and her place with the family, Camilla was a part of the Queen's Golden Jubilee in 2002. She got to sit in the royal family box. A month earlier, she makes her first public speech. And generally things are moving in the right direction for Camilla and Charles. Not so much for Mark Boland. We are going to get into his downfall and surprising relationship that he keeps on in the next video. So while Mark Boland was definitely successful in improving the images of both Camilla and Charles and setting Camilla on a path to eventually marry Charles and be accepted by the British public and the media, he didn't make friends along the way. A lot of people, particularly comms offices within the royal family, were not happy with his scorched earth methods.
Inside the firm, however, Boland's methods were starting to cause trouble, as other members of the family found themselves on the wrong end of royal stories that made Charles look good, at least by comparison. Boland's activities were creating collateral damage.
There's no question that Mark was prepared to promote the Prince of Wales, and if it dished other members of the royal family, so be it.
This is an incredibly interesting piece from The Guardian. It's from 2001. It's called Knives Out for Spin Doctor as Royals Feud. Quote, observers say the royal family is riven by a dispute which pits Charles and his advisors against the Queen, Prince Philip, and the Earl and Countess of Wessex and their advisors. The two sides have been jockeying for public affection for months, and now the royal household has dramatically raised the stakes by persuading Black, an arch-conservative and a monarchist, to mount a media strike to try to take out the man they blame for damaging the House of Windsor. Bolland is also blamed for that whole Advent TV Productions, Prince Edward situation where Edward's media company was filming William, or allegedly filming William. The prince's friends deny that Bolland has been leaking information, but the comms office is reportedly rather leaky. Bolland resigns in 2003, gets a pretty nice severance package, and then he goes for broke. Mark is offered a regular Sunday column, which he names Blackadder after the nicknames that the two princes gave him. And he has unkind things to say about Prince William, Prince Harry, Prince Charles. He calls Prince Charles a very weak man. He later, in a witness statement in 2006, would say that Charles is basically a political dissident. He also admits in his statement that he's essentially a de facto private secretary for Camilla Parker Bowles during his time with the British royal family. What's also interesting is that according to the Telegraph, Mark Boland keeps close ties with Camilla even after he's left. Which is interesting given the fact that he has not so nice things to say about her husband and stepsons upon leaving his position. Quote, "He has become more of a friend to her and will continue to give advice in a private capacity. As I understand it, it will be unpaid advice, but that is a private matter between the two," said one source. Again, one source, take it with a grain of salt. But the Queen has more plans to get Charles's office in line, and this is who she sends.
In February 2002, one of the Queen's most trusted courtiers, Sir Michael Peat, was appointed to take control of Charles's court as his private secretary.
Michael Pea's attitude was that the press office had been leaking like a calendar.
We'll get back into the timeline and into Sir Michael Peat in the next video.